Becoming Zoe. Written by Simon Judd and Alex Carter. Read by Richard Hammond.
Hello, I'm Richard Hammond. We live in uncertain times. Cyber terrorism, computer hacking, an increasing reliance on social media that will inevitably result in the death of oral communication and the evolution of massive thumbs. But within this sea of uncertainty, there is always one rock to which we can cling. Ourselves, our essence, our core. No one can take us away from us. Or can they? Tonight's story is a cautionary tale which asks you the question, is you ever truly safe? This story is called Becoming Zoe. Keith was a postman. He'd been a postman since he left school in 1998, and his careers advisor had declared he'd never make anything of himself, recommending a career that got Keith in the open air and demanded no sense of teamwork whatsoever. Keith, you see, had always had a bit of an unfortunate air about him, and despite his best efforts to make friends, was always thwarted by his inherent dullness. So being a postie suited him down to the ground. Every day he'd grab his mini-disc player and a bar of chocolate, zip up his anorak and hit the road, where he was uniformly ignored by everyone he came across. Fast forward 15 years, and not much had changed. Keith was still very much Keith, still doing the same round, and still the loneliest postman since they stopped making mini-discs. Sure, he had made one friend since the turn of the millennium, but Fat Ron from the depot wasn't exactly scintillating company, and sometimes Keith felt that he only pretended to enjoy highlighting his copy of the Radio Times together. Highlighting was one of Keith's three primary interests in life, you see, the others being pro wrestling and alliteration. Now, they may seem like an odd combination, but when the wonder of world wrestling was broadcast on Friday, the 5th of February at 5:55, Keith nearly fainted. What Keith really needed was a mate, a partner, proper companionship, and actually, he felt he was owed it. After all, he'd tried so hard to make friends on his round. But karma chose to take all his hair, enlarge his waistline, and keep him single. If Keith could have chosen his mate, it would have been his dream girl, Zoe. She lived at number 13 on the pleasingly named Clover Close, and was tall, with beautiful blonde hair that flowed down her back like a long line of luminous light, thought Keith, alliteratively. Every morning, as Keith walked past her, he would say,
"Good morning, Zoe. You're the most beautiful woman in the world. If you were mine, I'd cherish you more than my WrestleMania souvenir sticker album 2004.
The problem was, Keith was saying this with his eyes, and Zoe didn't speak the lingo. If she had, she would have replied with her mouth.
No thanks, weirdo.
Regularly, Keith would ponder with Ron the issue of how to get Zoe to notice him, usually in a highlighter changeover break. But neither of them could think of a plan. Then one day, everything changed. Keith was doing his round as per normal. When he got to number 13 Clover Close, he fished Zoe's mail from his massive post pram and noticed something he'd not seen before. On one of her letters, the gum from the envelope flap had started to loosen. Should he? Could he? Would he? Yes. Making sure he was unseen, Keith peeled back the rest of the envelope and gently eked out the contents from within. A letter from the British Butterfly Association thanking Zoe for her membership fee and looking forward to seeing her at next month's AGM. Keith's heart was all aflutter as a plan started to form in his mind. Rescanning the letter and storing the information within his mental hard drive like some kind of single white email, Keith hurriedly resealed the envelope, popped it through Zoe's slot, and went on his way. For the rest of his shift, Keith's mind was crammed full of butterflies. He had to admit he'd never been particularly interested in them before. But if Zoe was, then he would be too. That night, he devoured all he could on the metamorphosing insects, only stopping momentarily for a pot noodle and high-speed highlight of that week's Totally Top telly. By sunrise, he was ready. He rushed through the first part of his round, ensuring that he got to Clover Close in plenty of time. As soon as he saw Zoe exit number 13, he wandered up the road to meet her, as nonchalantly as one can when one's about to execute the most daring plan since self-adhesive postage stamps. As soon as their paths were about to cross, Keith took out his mobile and began a very loud, very imaginary conversation.
Yes, that's right, Tarquin. Yeah, a Palos Verde blue. Yeah, I know. I just got it this morning from Africa. Bloody rare. The rarest there is, I think. But also, in my opinion, Tarquin, the most beautiful.
Bingo. As soon as Keith mentioned the Palos Verdes blue, Zoe stopped in her tracks.
Excuse me? Are you new?
Keith bit his lip.
Yeah, first day, actually. I needed something to do after I got back from my dangerous butterfly collecting mission in Africa.
So rare to meet a fellow lepidopterist.
Yeah, almost as rare as the Palos Verde blue.
Joked Keith, hoping a lepidopterist wasn't a lover of big cats.
I've never seen you at the British Butterfly Association AGM.
Oh, I've not been yet. This year will be my first.
Oh, well then, Zoe, I might just see you there.
Zoe flinched.
How do you know my name if you've just started?
Because I like to check my mail in advance, be prepared, as I would be on a butterfly hunt.
Keith and Zoe chatted for another 10 minutes or so, and to Keith's amazement, Zoe agreed to go on a date with the lovable lepidopterist. Keith couldn't believe it was so simple. Why had he never thought of this before? Who needs proper conversation or genuine shared interests when you can just read someone's letters and cheat? Day by day for the next month, Keith steamed open Zoe's mail and made himself an expert on her life. He found himself in her favourite museums, joined her overpriced gym, and their doorstep chats became regular occurrences as they cooed about a shared love of films, books, and no-win, no-fee solicitors. One date became 2, became 3, became 4. And before you could say antiquated service that needs to be privatised and sold to the highest bidder, Keith was Zoe's official Royal Mail. Take that, karma. But the more he read, the more he changed. And not just character changes, real physical changes. He stopped needing to shave. His saggy moobs firmed and nipples elongated. His legs became more shapely, and after one particularly heavy night poring over Zoe's post, his hair even began to grow back, tiny clumps of luminescent shoots poking out of his head like he'd fallen asleep in a bowl of highlighters. There was no doubt about it. Keith was becoming a woman. He tried to adapt to his newfound femininity, to fathom the mystery of the bra strap, to swap his sandals for stilettos, to apply makeup in a way that didn't make him look like a blind clown. But on top of all of this, he also had to avoid Zoe, who understandably was getting suspicious at her perfect man's disappearance. He gave excuses not to meet, blaming illness or a wrestling marathon night. And when he got the sack of a different kind from the post office, Keith texted Zoe to say he'd been bitten by a rabid dog, would be in quarantine for a month, and that she should stay away at all costs. But Zoe was having none of it. Keith was avoiding her because he'd met someone else. After all, who wouldn't want to bag her postie with the mostie? Was someone else receiving his special deliveries? Had Keith finally persuaded a girl to participate in his weird wrestling roleplay? She decided to confront the problem head on. Walking to his flat, Zoe's worst fears were confirmed as she saw a tall blonde woman coming out, wearing a hoodie and a Mexican wrestling mask.
A little shit. Let me in. I want to see Keith.
He's not in. I'm his sister?
Take off that mask. If you're shagging my boyfriend, the least you can do is show your face.
The woman peeled off her mask. Zoe stopped in her tracks.
Hi, I'm Zoe.
It was like looking in a mirror. The original Zoe, let's call her Zoe 1, followed the transformed Zoe, Zoe 2, into Keith's flat.
What the hell is going on? I'm so sorry, Zoe. Why don't we both have a cup of our favourite chamomile tea and talk about this woman to woman? Talk about what? Talk about how I used to be Keith, but through going through your mail and taking over your life, I've somehow become Zoe. I'm you. You're not. I don't know who you are or what kind of sick joke this is, but please just tell me where Keith is. Oh, God, that is so you. Me. Us. I'm Keith. Or I was. Look, I know it's a lot to take in, but I've been thinking about it, and actually it's perfect. I mean, we are literally the perfect couple. It's all I've ever wanted. It's not what I want. We could live as identical twins. Think of the possibilities. Finally, I can be someone. We could even become a famous wrestling tag team, the Siamese Sisters. Oh, you're a freak. I'm calling the police. No! No, for the first time in my life, people notice me. I've transformed from something ugly and forgettable into something beautiful. Like a butterfly. Surely you of all people get that.
What Zoe 1 did get was angry, lunging for Zoe 2 and trying to escape. Zoe 2 grabbed her, a new steely intent flaring behind her eyelash extensions.
No, Zoe! I won't let you go! I can't let you go!
Yelled Zoe 2, both literally and metaphorically, before performing a signature move head drop straight out of WrestleMania. Getting to her feet, Zoe 1 fought back, but with both being of equal build, strength and weight, neither could get the upper hand. After 5 minutes of slap and counter-slap, suddenly one of them was thrown against the wall, dislodging the framed Palos Verde blue, which sat there encased in glass. It wobbled, then promptly fell on her head with a sickening and mortal crash.
Help me!
The injured Zoe cried, blood pouring from her head. The other Zoe crouched down, but was then struck by a thought. Stepping back, she simply walked over the dying Zoe and shut the door behind her. 6 months later, Zoe was back home at 13 Clover Close and had forgotten all about the unfortunate incident with Keith. The only reminder being the Palos Verde blue, now reframed and hanging in pride of place in her hallway. Every day, Zoe would pass it, smiling to herself, before opening the front door and purposefully ignoring the new postman as he handed her her post, including a copy of the Radio Times ready for her to highlight. What a totally tip-top Tuesday, she thought to herself as she flopped down in front of the telly to watch the wrestling. It turns out Keith's career advisor was wrong. He could make something of himself, or rather, someone. So there you have it. You is never truly safe. So beware. Goodbye from me, and remember, trust no one, ever.